break beats have been the missing link connecting the diasporic community to its drum-woven past. Whereas the quantized drum has allowed the whirling mathematicians to calculate the ever-changing distance between rock and stardom.
Coded Language is a manifesto that I wrote that is, you know, I will always feel aligned with what's said there. You know, motherfuckers better realize now is the time to self-actualize. It's what all I'm saying to this day. And that is a declarative statement on one, a generation. What excites me and has excited me in the past, during that time in particular, about hip-hop was that it was fresh, and I thought that we were making mistakes by trying to define it too early. You know, like, people are always trying to say something like, it's not real hip-hop unless it's street. You know, and I was like, well, that's funny because De La, Tribe, Eric B. and Rakim, EPMD, Run DMC, they all came from the suburbs. They all came from houses with basements. LL Cool J, like, they didn't really come from the streets the same way that, like, KRS-One or Wu-Tang came from the streets. So we should be careful with, you know, our idea of, like, what's street and what's not, because in fact, a lot of the first, not the first breed, not the Grandmaster Flashes and Africa Bambatas, but the next layer, which is those people I just listed, many of them came from middle-class households with parents who were like professors and shit. And there's always a dialogue between classes and art and in life and all this stuff, and if we're paying attention, it's more complex than just the streets. When I was writing Coded Language, I was very into trying to articulate a more open definition of the art form, the era, the times.
Our music is our alchemy. We stand as the manifested equivalent of 3 buckets of water and a handful of minerals, thus realizing that those very buckets turned upside down supply the percussive factor of forever. I
mean, you listen to traditional West African drumming, for example, and you hear like it's dense, you know, djembe and all this stuff, like traditional West African drumming. I reference West African drumming because so many in this diaspora came from the Western seaboard, you know, and it's not necessarily the hip-hop beats that we know. It's more dense. Then I started thinking about traditional First Nation drumming, indigenous drumming from here. You know, that's the stereotypical way that you know, emulate that. And I think of the fact that this music was created on this continent, and that in fact it seems to be like an exchange between these two ideas. It's like, you know, and this idea, this conversation between this dense drumming and sparse drumming, creating, let's say, the funk or you know, that space between the beats that's particular to this experience, that is not simply African, but African extracted from they're put on here. And you know, I just thought that for me it was interesting to contemplate what that meant, and what it also meant to be making music using mixed media. You know, so that the idea of history catching up with the present, because I'm sampling this Dizzy Gillespie album that's recorded in the 50s, but I'm in 1990 whatever, let's say, and I put it on the turntable and I slow it down, I have an MPC and I sample it, right? So now I've taken this old idea, I've stretched it, cut it up, and made it fit this new idea of how it should sound to sound fresh to me, right? And as a result of that, I've taken this old thing, made it completely new, but it still has all the qualities of its oldness, you know? I think there's a sort of like shamanistic alchemy that we play with through music, you know? And I think it's special. And that's part of the reason why I'm like, don't waste that beat with your bullshit lyrics. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, yo, we're doing really fresh shit. You know, like, don't treat it like fast food.
Any utterance unaimed will be disclaimed, will be maimed, 2 rappers slain.